The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
I know every day I come on this podcast and I talk about how much I like this time of year. I'm not BSing you, but it's for reasons beyond just the fact that basketball is so close to us. So that, to some degree, is where maybe I am BSing you a little bit. One of the reasons that I love this time of year is because this is when all of the basketball fans that are not as completely insane as me or us here at Hoop Ball, maybe that's the bar you set, those of us that are staring at basketball news even throughout the entire offseason, this is the time of year when most folks start to really pay attention again. And that's reflected in the notion that podcast listenership is way up the last couple of weeks. Website traffic is way up the last couple of weeks. And it's just fun for me to look at who's paying attention to the show and see more of you paying attention to the show. So welcome one and all to Fantasy NBA Today. I am Dan Besbris. This is a Hoop Ball presentation. Our era of the guest will continue here throughout the next couple of weeks, although the more I think about it, the more I think tomorrow might be our one show without a guest, maybe until opening day. So I think we might go ahead and make tomorrow a mailbag show. You guys like those mailbag shows, right? Today, we'll be talking to Mike Pellisier of Bourbon Street Shots. We're going to get the inside skinny on the Pelicans. It's good. Pellisier, Pelican. We didn't do that on purpose, neither did he. I don't think. We're going to talk to Mike Pellisier today, get an idea of who else is going to do stuff in New Orleans besides Jrue Holiday and Anthony Davis. We have the obvious choices: Nico Mirotic, Julius Randle, Elfrid Payton, E'Twaun Moore. But really, who is going to see the minutes? Who is going to see the touches? Because there's not a ton of depth on that team, but it's also sort of strangely constructed. Mike's going to break that down for us. Again, he's at Bourbon Street Shots. Mike is not on Twitter. You'll hear about that during our discussion here coming up momentarily. Also on today's podcast, we broke down the first 3 rounds of our industry 9-category Roto mock draft on yesterday's show. We're going to do the next 3 on today's podcast, and then I'm going to try to knock out 4 or 6 of them on tomorrow's show, along with a couple of questions from the mailbag. That's my hope. We'll see how all of that shakes out. In a perfect world, I'd love to get through 4 rounds of the industry mock today, but you guys know how I end up talking longer than I plan to, and everything goes down the tubes. First things first, I mentioned this era of the guest. Many of you have already listened to some of our recent shows, but we have a coupon for the Hoop Ball Draft Guide embedded in every single podcast here where we do have a guest on the show. So if you find any of our pods and there's a guest, know that there's a $3 off coupon code for the Hoop Ball Draft Guide somewhere in that show. Spoiler alert, it's generally towards the end of the guest interview, if you're just hunting for it. The one that, by the way, the early leader in the clubhouse is Haymaker from Friday's show with Aaron Brewski. But if you're listening to today's show, don't use that one. Use the code you'll get later on today's podcast. Thanks to everybody that continues to purchase the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. It is awesome. 400 player profiles. The B150 coming in 6 days. It'll be added to the draft guide. It's $15.99 right now. You can get it for $12.99 with that coupon code. I would strongly suggest that you utilize it. And if you really want to get the draft guide cheap, participate in our little retweet game over at Hoop Ball Tweets. If you look up the original tweet from Friday, we're looking for a maximum number of retweets on one particular post. And if we get there, you'll see big draft guide discounts. You can't use the coupon code on top of it because, well, the price will be lower than using the coupon code anyway. But help us get there. Go find that thing and retweet it again. That is from Friday. We are about a third of the way to our destination, I believe. So we got a little ways to go on that thing, and you've got until tomorrow. We extended it by 1 day to do it. So make sure to check that out. It's pretty easy to find. It's a tweet that has a graphic in it that just says retweets unlock huge discounts. We're not too covert over here at Hoopball. So we're hoping to get to that mark. Help us get there, and then that'll unlock a flash sale. But if we don't get there, no flash sale. So you can't bank on that either. Coupon code's still floating around. ADP reports coming for the draft guide shortly. B150 coming in 6 days. It's awesome. We can't wait to get there. And you can get yours at any time. Also wanted to mention, we got a couple of questions over the last few days on listener leagues. There are still spots available. Many of you have been placed already. Our good buddy Neil Rochlani, podcast host here at Hoopball, is placing folks in leagues. You can tweet at me, at Dan Besbris, at Neil, Ball with Neil is his Twitter handle, and we'll get you placed in a league. Or go to the Hoopball forums. There's a Hoopball Leagues thread there. Just post in that one. We got head-to-head, we got Roto, we got $50, we got free leagues. They're all 9-cat this year, but we'd love to have you in some Hoopball listener and reader leagues. There are also pros in those leagues as well. Let's quickly do round 4 of the industry mock, and then we're going to talk to Mike Pellisier. I like to break things up a little bit on the pod, do a little bit of one, a little bit of another, bounce back and forth, kind of keep us all fresh. Round 4, picks 37 through 48. Here they are in order, and then we'll talk about them. Pick 37, Klay Thompson, then Al Horford, DeAndre Ayton, DeAndre Jordan. Yes, we're clustering DeAndres in this league. Nikola Vucevic is at 41, then C.J. McCollum, John Collins, and Jarrett Allen went back-to-back at 43 and 44. Otto Porter Jr. fell all the way to 45, DeMar DeRozan at 46, Gordon Hayward at 47, and Tobias Harris at 48. I like round 4. Not just this round 4, but round 4 in general. This is where you can start to you can loosen the belt a little bit in round 4. You don't have to stick by, or stick close, I should say, to ADPs. Rounds 1 and 2, they tend to be pretty accurate. 1 in particular. 2 has been a total mess the last couple of years. 3, you get these sort of the leftover 2s, which to me is a nice round because you have this round 2 upside, but guys that just didn't get picked in round 2. And then once you hit round 4, you're in what I like to call the kind of that second large bucket, where you're not going to get many superstars, maybe none at this point, that are going to make that giant leap. There's usually one. Last year it was Victor Oladipo. There's one guy in this 35 to 60 range, rounds 4 and 5, that might make the giant leap. But mostly, you're getting into a chunk of players where you're hunting dudes that are going to be in the 30s. That's your goal. Or 40s, and you just don't want to get anybody that's going to be a big letdown. So there's some upside hunting here. Not a ton, but it is time to start to venture away from the ADPs a little bit. You've got about 2 rounds of wiggle room. Klay Thompson at 37, very safe play. I have no qualms with this one, none whatsoever. That's basically where he's going to end up after another year of the same stuff. Al Horford at 38, maybe a little bit early for Big Al. With so many options in Boston, he's not going to be too impacted, but his assists could come down a tiny bit, and that's part of his value. He's a great percentages guy, steals, some blocks, shoots the 3, doesn't score much, doesn't rebound a ton for a big man. Anything that peels off from Al Horford could knock him down a decent amount because his value lies in the ability to contribute a nice amount everywhere. So a little early for my taste, but again, tough to get on teams that have to pick near the turns. And yes, I refer to the beginning of the draft as the turn because after round 1, they're doubling back on things as well. And for this one, this is our good buddy Bogman. At 38, he knew that this big run of centers coming up, those guys weren't going to get back to him at 59. He was going to be stuck with the next crop of centers, the Valanciunises, the Steven Adamses. So he better get his guy, and so at that point, you're picking between Al Horford, DeAndre Ayton, DeAndre Jordan, Nick Vucevic, John Collins, Jarrett Allen. Those are the guys that are all going in that neck of the woods. I feel like I'm missing one other one. Enes Kanter. Sorry, he went in there as well. He's in the 50s. So at that point, you just pick one of those guys. You pick whichever one you like the most. And you could certainly make an argument for Al Horford over the rest of those names. I know that everybody's going to be like, well, Dan, what order would you put them in? It's a silly exercise. Who of them would I avoid? DeAndre Jordan, I would definitely avoid. At 44, I would avoid Jarrett Allen. That eliminates his upside. There's really not much higher he can go with the way the Nets distribute minutes. I don't think I'd take Enes Kanter in the high 30s, but again, he went in the 50s, so that's a different beast. I think those are my thoughts. That's, I think, what I would not do at 38. The rest of these guys, you could make an argument for it. Horford, Ayton, Vooch, Collins. You can make an argument for any of those guys to go right in this spot, and they basically did. DeAndre Ayton going at 39, pretty early for a rookie. You guys know how I feel about rooks. And he didn't show anything really in Summer League, but there's also no competition in Phoenix, so take one, leave the other kind of thing. DeAndre Jordan at 40, I hope you're punting at this point. In Roto, that's a tough move to make. I don't draft punt guys in Roto. You know that about me. So beyond that, my thoughts on Jordan are fairly worthless. Nick Vucevic, there is some risk associated with this one. This was a guy that I ended up with here. I wanted probably one of those other dudes. I realized I didn't draft any centers. Honestly, if I could go back, I'd have taken one. I wasn't going to get one in the first round, but maybe the second round instead of Kyrie, I could have dropped down and taken a Gobert or a Capella, but those guys didn't get back to me in round 3, which left me with, do I want to take LaMarcus Aldridge here, or I got Kemba at 32. I guess Draymond was also an option there. I thought, I'm going to take Kemba because he's a shoo-in for this value or better, and I'll hope that one of these other guys gets back to me. Well, they didn't really. They almost all went in between my Kemba and my Vooch. But Vooch is not a bad pick. He's a top 35 kind of center. The hope is that he actually plays all year or gets traded to a spot where he sees decent minutes as well. So not my favorite pick of the draft, but also not my least favorite. It'll be fine. It just didn't go all that great for me here. CJ McCollum at 42. Yeah, that's fine. I think last year is probably more what he was, maybe a little chance for a bounce back this season, if the shooting percentage comes back up a little bit. John Collins, we've mostly wiped out his value if he's going at 43. I've seen him as high as the late 30s. Not that I don't buy the hype on Collins. I think he's going to have a really good season. It's just so does everybody else. And so now everybody's going bonkers for this kid who every week he's going earlier in drafts. At some point, he's going before what his rank is going to be. And we're getting there, guys. We're getting very close to that point. I'm not upset with it at this particular juncture, right? Like, this is where most folks think he's going to end up. But the hope on guys like a Collins, a second-year guy, is that there should be a little bit of profit margin there, and we're wiping it out, everybody. We've wiped it out. The hype train has wiped it out. I know I preach about not buying the hype on this podcast, and I feel like maybe I should take 30 seconds here just to kind of enumerate that. What I mean really is not that the player isn't good. Quite the opposite. It's a player that's going to be excellent. I mean, we all have very high hopes for John Collins this year. But at a certain point, you're drafting him where you think he's going to end up. At that point, you're just taking the guy you want, and there's nothing but downside. Best case scenario, he's in the 30s? Can we agree on that? Maybe? 20s would be tough. I guess by totals, what if he plays 81 games or something like that? But on a per-game basis, let's talk about that for right now. On a per-game basis, best case scenario is probably 30s. So if you're taking him in the early 40s, there isn't a whole lot of wiggle room there. And this isn't so much about John Collins, but just sort of a note in general. You want to try to draft guys later than where you think they're going to finish. And if everybody's fighting over the same guy, that's a bidding war. That's a tough battle to win. Meanwhile, Otto Porter fell to 45. You guys know I hate what Dwight Howard is going to do to Washington, but 45 is too late for him in a 9-cat. He'll coast to value ahead of that spot. And I don't have him as high as last year, where he was inside the top 20, But 45, 2 rounds down for a 9-category beast? Nah. DeMar DeRozan, this is about where he should be going. It's where he ends up every year. Gordon Hayward, he's been falling a little bit. I think this is maybe a little early to take him, if only because you could potentially get him later. But now we're towards the end of a round again, and this, I've actually spoken to Alex already about this draft. That pod will be dropping likely later this week or first thing next week. This is a guy that's not going to get back to him in 2 picks. Maybe he would have at the beginning of round 5, but, a difference between 47 and 50. We've seen Hayward go in the 60s, but Alex didn't even have a pick in the 60s. He didn't pick again until 71 after number 50. So there's a little bit of risk there. Not a guy that I'm bending over backwards to draft. He does a little bit of everything, but doesn't excel at any one particular category. And he's not my type of fantasy player, but there is some value with as far as he's generally falling. Tobias Harris at 48 is a great spot for him. His very high floor, kind of low ceiling sort of player. He probably won't be any better than about 38, but he probably won't be any worse than about 55. So you got a nice window here, and you're plucking him right in the middle of it. That's nice. That's a safe play. You can run him out there every day for a season and feel good about it. Josh Richardson at 49. We love Josh Richardson here at Hoop Ball. We've been crowing about him since 2016. But barring Miami sending all of their healthy players to Minnesota for Jimmy Butler, they have a lot of healthy players. Too many guys. And that scares me because what we've seen in the past is that Richardson gets a little passive when guys like Goran Dragic and Dion Waiters and Justice Winslow and James Johnson, less so James Johnson than the other names I mentioned, are on the floor. He tends to take a little bit of a back seat. Now, a lot of his value... Oh, we got into round 5, by the way, here. Screw it. We'll do round 5 and then talk to Mike. A lot of his value lies in the fact that he's a guard that steals and blocks shots, but he also needs to do something on the offensive end. Hit some threes, get you some points, a couple of rebounds, and with those other guys out there, he's going to get squeezed a little bit. So this is a step back kind of moment here for Richardson, where unless Miami can thin the herd, and if they can, then Richardson could go way higher than 49, but if they can't, he's in a tight spot. Quite literally. There's just bodies, shoulder to shoulder. So he's a guy that, there's a big upside to him, but there's also a bit of a downside. I hope that he excels. He's one of our favorites. He's a defensive percentages guy. He's everything we hope for. The Besbris quartet of statistical categories. Field goal, free throw, steals, and blocks. The easiest way to rack up 40 points in your Roto League. Alex took Aaron Gordon at number 50. I think that's about where he's been going. If he falls into the 50s, I think I'd take a flyer on him. Last year was more or less the basement for him after that crazy strong start. He was just terrible for 3 months after his injury. I don't think that's that. I don't think that's who he is necessarily, and neither did Philip Rossman-Reich, and I'm inclined to believe him over most others because he's our magic expert, man. Jason Tatum at 51. I'm less high on Jason Tatum than almost everybody else. I don't have a ton of reasons for it. I just think that we got carried away a little bit. Also, Boston has like 7 dudes that all want to play 35 minutes a game. That's not good for fantasy. Jeff Teague at 52. That's fine. And he could be one of the big beneficiaries of a potential Jimmy Butler trade. They'll have to go back to more of a point guard heavy offense, the Ricky Rubio era. I'm not going to see Rubio-esque numbers from Teague, but he does a lot of interesting things, good steals, better field goal percent than most point guards, very good free throw shooter, doesn't take a ton of threes. You're going to have to be okay with that. I'd love Teague to fall into the 60s. He went at 52 in this particular format, but he should be, 45 to 60 range kind of guy. So you get him right in the middle of it. Enes Kanter at 53. I like Enes Kanter this year. This is earlier than he's generally going in drafts, but I like what he's going to do. Jamal Murray at 54. This is probably a good spot for him. The hype started to get carried away. He was going earlier, but now he's dropped back a tiny bit, and this is a much more reasonable spot for a guy in Murray, who also is kind of a percentages guy, but doesn't do the steals and blocks side. So he's moved closer to a player that I might consider targeting. Not great field goal percent, but okay. Great free throw shooting numbers. I mean, I don't know if he's going to shoot like 93% again this coming year, but he's an excellent foul shooter. He's a good basketball player. I'm still not fully sold on him, but this is probably about where he should go. Hassan Whiteside at 55. This is earlier than I've seen him go in other drafts. I love the fact that he's falling so precipitously, because if we take a moment and look back at what was a very disappointing 2017-2018 season for Whiteside, on a per-game basis, he was still number 39. Right? Now, the fact that he missed a ton of time, he only played 54 games, that knocked him down on the totals level, but his free throw shooting wasn't nearly as bad. He shot 70% at the line last year. He shot 54% from the field. He blocked almost 2 shots a game. He averaged a double-double. It could be a lot worse. And if you believe he's going to make it through 65 games or more this year, then he's a great value to get at this point in a draft. Nobody's giving him any credit. Everybody just assumes that he's not going to play for Miami, but the metrics show they are actually a better team with him on the floor. So until something massive changes for the Heat, Whiteside's probably going to play 24 to 27 minutes a night. It's not going to be like it was a couple years ago where he was pushing 32, 33 minutes, where they were trying to run him out there. Last year, 25 and change minutes per game. That's probably where he'll be this year as well. So don't be surprised, but if you can get him in the 60s or 70s even, you have to. I got Rob Covington at 56, which felt like an unbelievable gift. I know he's not going to shoot the ball well, but defensively he's unreal. Unreal. One of the best steal block combo guys in the NBA. 1.7 steals, 0.9 blocks, 2.6 the combined defensive numbers for Rob Covington. There just aren't that many guys that get up to that level. There aren't. Go back to the beginning of the draft. If you eliminate the first round, because that's where most of those guys fall, 2.6. By the way, the folks in the first round that got to that level, Anthony Davis, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Victor Oladipo. That's it. Boogie did it out of the second round. Kristaps Porzingis, before he went down, was doing it. Drummond. Kawhi is one of those guys when he's actually healthy enough to go. I mean, that's basically it. Draymond, now you're in the third round. Draymond is up in that. Rudy Gobert is up in that stratosphere. And then Rob Covington. I mean, he was number 36 last year on a per-game basis, and he played 80 games. So he was even better by totals. Why he's in the mid-50s, anybody's guess. Wilson Chandler's not taking his minutes. So that was a gift. Loved that one. Blake Griffin at 57. Not a big Blake Griffin fan here at Hoop Ball. His game is just crumbling, but, you know, in the late 50s, I guess it's not the end of the world. That's where he was on a per-game basis last year. Maybe he stays healthier. I doubt it. Not my favorite pick. There. Can't sugarcoat it, I guess. Mike Conley at 58. He's a guy with top 30 upside. If he can stay healthy, this is about where he probably should go. Luka Doncic. Or is it Doncic? What have we decided on this one? At 59, I hate rookies, so sorry. And Steven Adams at number 60. Probably a little bit early for my taste on Steven Adams. But we'll talk to Seth Klein shortly. That one will likely be coming up either later this week as well. He was at number 67 on a per-game basis last year. He's very durable, but that free throw thing is a real bog. And so for that reason, I think he probably would have fallen a little bit further. Not necessarily had to grab him. But again, you're talking about a team on the turn as well. So not going to get back to you. I've affectionately titled this time of year the Era of the Guest, and the Era of the Guest continues with the recently Twitterless Mike Pellisier of Bourbon Street Shots. I was all ready to tweet your appearance, and then I realized, wait a minute, this man has done something wise. What? You got off of Twitter?
Yeah, so I've tried it twice, and then I had to go back because I love being privy to all the stuff that's happening. But this time I think it's going to stick. I've gone back and forth, and this time I'm like, well, I don't really enjoy it. I don't think it adds to my ability to analyze the game. So I'll stick to my Google chats with my team at Bourbon Street Shots, and I get a lot of information there, and it's good. It's been really peaceful.
Yeah, I was going to say, it probably brings like a weird measure of solace to your everyday. I don't even know what I would do if I didn't waste 5 minutes every day getting angry at a comment section.
Yeah, that's about accurate. It's exactly as you think it would be.
That sounds like sweet bliss. BourbonStreetShots.com is the website. At BourbonST Shots is the Twitter handle. Do make sure to check that out. We are talking New Orleans Pelicans on today's podcast. And it's a good one, too, because I wouldn't call it a tumultuous offseason. There was obviously the Boogie Cousins stuff where different versions of a story were coming out. But we're a fantasy listener base, and this time of year, everybody's pretty locked in and going crazy about fantasy draft prep. And so it comes down to how minutes and touches get redistributed. I can say that word, I promise, with the new roster makeup. So, Mike, the Pels, the big ones, I think you'd obviously have to say Julius Randle coming in, Elfrid Payton coming in, Rajon Rondo not coming back. He's a Laker now. Those to me seem like the ones that jump out, right?
Oh, sure. I mean, and Cousins obviously as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of vacated minutes. There's a lot of vacated usage. I think they're certainly coming in with both Payton and Randall. There will be opportunities.
So let's just start from the top and work our way down, because AD is the consensus number one. Unreal second half last year. And just, by the way, just from like a pure fan standpoint, what he was doing in the playoffs in particular, I mean, that had to make you smile, right? He was single-handedly guarding 4 out of 5 guys on the other team.
Yeah, so Davis in the playoffs has been a real revelation both times. I mean, it's been as fantastic as he's been during the regular season. It translates really well. And even early on, when we played Golden State years ago, in his first playoff appearance, they couldn't stop him. And he had Draymond Green guarding him a lot. He's just someone who is a really unique matchup, and not a lot of people can do that. So he's fantastic.
I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that in that Portland series, it seemed like the principals were like, okay, AD, you take 80% of the floor, and we're going to put the other 4 guys on the other 20%, and it worked. There was nothing Portland could do.
Yeah, so it's really like it's one of those things where, as great as AD is, I still think he does not get the credit that he deserves. I think he's a top 5 player, and I think that should be the consensus. I don't know if it always is, and that's sort of crazy to me. But also, I'm biased because I see him do this kind of stuff consistently, and he's just amazing. I don't know how many ways that I can say it. He's fantastic.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I was hoping that the playoffs last year might be that ticket to, not that he's not a superstar already, but just to have his name in that elite group. And you're right. I don't know if that happened yet, but certainly from the fantasy landscape, he's up there. He was so far ahead of everybody else in fantasy value last year that he's generally a pretty easy one to handicap. I guess my question for you then, Mike, is there any adjustment for AD? With Boogie in town, he didn't have to do quite as much, but Boogie's gone. Julius Randle, Niko Mirotic, obviously Jrue Holiday. Does any of this allow him to take his foot off the throttle, or his foot off the gas, his hand off the throttle a little bit? Or are we looking at a guy that's going to keep trying to do everything and you just kind of hope the pieces all stay together?
I don't know if he's going to put up the kind of points that he did after Cousins went down for the entire season. I think it's certainly worth noting that Cousins was the only other person who could handle 25 points plus a night, and that's a big deal. So when that's gone, I mean, there is a lot of pressure on him despite having other options like Jrue, like Mirotic, and like Randall coming in. I think there's a lot of pressure on him, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he eclipsed 30 points per game. I think that's actually a fairly reasonable expectation.
So a decent season is what you're expecting.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
Okay, so Jrue Holiday. I think things get progressively more complicated as we work our way through the roster. Jrue came out last year and just blew everybody's mind. And actually, I don't remember the exact day it was, but Mike, you and I did a podcast leading up to last year where we talked about how there was a universe where good Rajon Rondo could actually make Jrue Holiday awesome playing off the ball a little bit more, and it happened. And I don't think you and I got enough credit for that.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think we had actually, I want to say we had another podcast in the middle of the season, maybe like 15, 20 games in. And I think this is before Rondo had come back.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, that was actually the worst basketball that I had seen Jrue play at any point during his career here. And then that rapidly shifted into becoming an incredible player. And honestly, like I've never seen Jrue play like that. In the playoffs, he was really good. I think he had some trouble with Golden State. They were a particularly bad matchup for him, but he dominated Portland. He was clearly the best guard of the floor, and he was playing against a really great guard in Lillard, and McCollum's not so bad either. So he's really stepped up last year.
Do you think, and we'll try to keep this focused on Jrue for now, do you think that Elfrid Payton can fill the role vacated by Rondo, or is there, and this is not me trying to pick on Payton in any way, is there kind of a basketball IQ drop-off there where, Mike, the thing we talked about last year, what shifted was that Jrue didn't have to be the guy orchestrating the offense. Is there going to be a weird, like a gravitational pull for him to try to pick it up where Payton might let it fall a little bit? Or do you think he can settle back into that same kind of semi-facilitator role that was so incredibly productive last year?
I hope so. I think there's a pretty big drop off, and I do have some concerns about our guards. Obviously, I've spoken very highly of Jrue. I don't have a lot of confidence in Payton. I do think so. Their pace last year after Cousins went down was, I think, one of the highest in history. It was actually pretty high even when Cousins was playing, but it took a huge uptick once he went out, and I expect that will help him somewhat. I think not having to get into an offense all the time in the half court setting will be helpful. But in terms of running the offense and what kind of responsibility Jrue will have, I think he will have to pick up at least some of it that was vacated by Rondo. And I do think I'm hopeful that between Mirotic and Randall and obviously Davis, the bigs being able to handle the ball some and sort of like a dribble handoffs and those kinds of actions that will mitigate the issues of Rondo leaving, because I think that is a real thing.
Yeah, the thing that we had covered at some detail last year was how he really just didn't look comfortable as a point guard. The passes were they seemed slow. Is that an accurate way to, like, when I was watching him play as the primary ball handler, it seemed like all of his passes were about a half second too late.
Yeah, I think when you put Jrue in that role where he is the one who's responsible with making sure everybody gets involved and getting his own, I think he overthinks it. So when you release him of that responsibility, it's more of, okay, just go to the basket and then other their looks because you're not the one tasked with that. So yeah, there's a lot of indecision, and honestly, like, he tightened up his handle at some point last year because previously Jrue, despite having a really great first step, would not often get to the basket the way that he should because his ball handling wasn't up to snuff. He couldn't really dribble through traffic. I think that is less of an issue when he's not the one who's creating the offense all the time, where he can sort of pick his spots. So yeah, the indecision, the slow passes, like that is a thing when he's in a position where he shouldn't be. So I'm hoping that we avoid that this year.
So that all leads me to sort of the last Jrue wrap-up question, which is, can he shoot almost 50% again if more of that responsibility is coming onto his shoulders? Or is that maybe the turnovers, field goal percent, that type of stuff, where maybe there's an uptick in other statistical categories, maybe that's where it balances out? I mean, it still feels like a pretty good season should be had, right?
Sure. I mean, I think there's going to be scoring available to him. I think that's the biggest thing. As far as field goal percentage, I mean, it's pretty hard to hit 50 as a guard, period. So despite, whatever, Jrue was last year, I'm trying to think of it. It looks like it's 49.4. I mean, that's hard to get to no matter who you are. So I think to expect it to go up, I certainly wouldn't expect it to go up. I think it would probably hover between maybe this is a sort of a wide berth, but 47 and 50, I think, is hopefully where he'll land. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a little bit of a drop off as he's forced to create a little bit more for himself. But he also does have, again, I really can't emphasize it enough, the fact that we have Mirotic, Davis, and Randall, all who are pretty smart ball handlers for being bigs. I think that's a really great thing. So that might help that a little bit.
Well, everybody knows that I've been stalking Nico Mirotic for the better part of a year and a half now, so we might as well talk about him next. He was one of my guys last year. He was one of my fantasy dudes that I threw out there and hammered hard, and then he got his face mooshed in, and everything sort of went to hell for 6 weeks. But he was awesome after that. When he came back, he was great for Chicago. He was great for you guys. What does the addition of Julius Randle do to Nico's prospects for this year? I think he played, what was he, around 28, 29 minutes per game with New Orleans. I'll double check on that, but is that a number that could go up? Are we at all concerned it could go down? He seemed like a really nice fit as a floor spacing big man.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it depends on. I've talked to some of the guys on our team, and they all kind of expect him to be the starter at the beginning. I have some reservations about that, not because of who he is as a player or how he matches with Davis, but because Davis tends to wear down over the season if he has to play the 5 at the beginning of the game. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Randall step into the starting lineup at some point. But with that said, I think very clearly 3 of our 4 best players are bigs. And I expect Mirotic and Randall both to hover between 28 and 32 game. I think they're getting their time. So I don't think it affects his prospects a whole lot.
It cut out for just a moment. I think you said between 28 and 32, right?
Yeah, so I expect both of them to land between 28 and 32.
Okay, yeah. So Nico, by the way, with New Orleans last year, 30 games with the Pels, 14.5 points, 8 rebounds, about a block and a steal per game, 2.23 pointers, back down closer to his career mark in field goal percent at 42.7 after that crazy 47% run with Chicago. A guy that shoots from outside as much as he does, shooting 47-48% from the field feels somewhat unsustainable. But again, talking to Mike Pellisier here of Bourbon Street Shots, they are at Bourbon ST Shots on Twitter. I mean, if he's playing 28 to 32 minutes, and it does seem like, and I know I'm sort of weaving my way through this question, but there aren't too many other options as bigs besides the 3 main guys we've been talking about. So, you know, is Jahlil Okafor going to log a bunch of minutes? Probably not. You guys are stockpiling Okafors lately, by the way.
Yeah, there's not, like you're saying. So to me, you have, you know, in theory, let's just say that you're just playing 2 bigs all the time. Then you have 96 minutes to basically available to those bigs. So 80's getting around 36. So right away, you're dropping off from, what did I say before, right? So it's 96, 36, that's left. 60 left between the 2. And again, maybe Okafor becomes something. Obviously, the bar is set low based off what he's done the last few seasons. But obviously, there's also some talent that could be available there. And if he's in the right kind of shape, I mean, he still provides some scoring punch off the bench. But I don't see him eating into either of those guys' minutes unless there's some sort of radical transformation in his game.
Yeah, and even if you put him at, 10 to 12 minutes per game, you're still talking about splitting 48 or 50 minutes between Randall and Mirotic, maybe not as much as fantasy owners would want, but that feels almost like a worst-case scenario.
Yeah, I don't expect either of them to drop between 25. And I actually, we can talk more about this later, I'm sure, but I am really high on Randall on this offense. I probably should have said that those 3 guys are all smart ball handlers, but they're all very good ball handlers for their positions. And I think Randall is going to be really good in this offense.
All right, well, let's talk about Julius Randle then. He's the next man on my list. He's an interesting case study because he is an absolute bull in a china shop on in an NBA where everybody seems to want to space the floor, and he's not really that. So, Mike, tell me how he fits in New Orleans.
I think the main thing is so once Cousins went down again, they pushed the ball a whole lot. They really got into their sets quickly, and their pace was absurd. And I think Randall, it's amazing to me at his size and strength that he can get up and down the floor the way he does. And I think something that he'll really enjoy is when you play with Anthony Davis, there's a lot of attention towards him. So there will be a lot of opportunities for offensive rebounds, for sort of getting one-on-one looks at the basket. And because he can dribble and attack the basket the way that he can and put his shoulder into someone, the chance of secondary help coming off of Anthony Davis is very slim. And if they do, then Davis will just clean it up anyway. So I think he's going to have a really good opportunity when he plays with Davis or even with Mirotic, who's a great shooter, to get some. I mean, he's played on the Lakers for the past few years and they haven't been very good. So this is a new system for him. I think he's going to do awesome.
Yeah, he shot 56% last year on a Lakers team that, like you said, was improving, but didn't have anybody on the roster that could pull people towards it, like an Anthony Davis or a Jrue Holiday. I mean, you could make the argument that either one of those guys has more sort of influence on the offensive side than anybody the Lakers threw out last season. Now, obviously that changes a little bit this year in LA, but he's not there anymore. I guess the question for a guy like Randall is more on the defensive side, but it seems like Anthony Davis can cover that up a little bit.
Yeah, and this is something that I think RPM said that Cousins was a good defender last year. I don't buy that for a second. I was one of those people where I think Cousins obviously has a role in this league. He's a fantastic volume scorer. He kind of, to me, is the Carmelo of centers, where for years he's been overrated because of his ability to be high usage and be pretty good at it. I don't think his overall effect on this team was that great, besides when Davis wasn't able to play. I think he was an excellent floor setter in the sense that he made our floor way higher as a team, but I don't think he made our ceiling as high as it should be given his talent. So, yeah, I don't think the bar is very high on defense for Randall, and I'm sure that he's not really known for it. But again, the bar is kind of low.
Yeah, I suppose so. He took 11 shots per game last year with the Lakers. Is that a number you think he could potentially exceed this season, or is that a decent target?
I would think Randall would probably be close to what was the points per game last year?
16 with the Lakers. He took a lot of free throws and made some of them.
Yeah, I think he would be. I think he'll be around that. I think he might be a little higher, maybe 17 or 18. Again, Mirotic obviously has some offensive ability there. Davis is going to eat up a lot of touches. Jrue's going to eat up a lot of touches. But I think Randall, I mean, we don't have past that. Those three guys, Etuan Moore's a spot-up shooter. And then after that, we have like absolutely no volume scoring. And so it's going to fall a lot on those top guys. I would be surprised to see him below 16.
Elfrid Payton's the last man on my list outside of sort of the more fringy guys, and maybe we can touch on those before I let you go. I didn't want to cloud things with my own opinion earlier in the podcast, but I'm not a big Elfrid Payton fan, and it sounds like you're a little bit concerned about that as well. My thought is, he never was able to sort of play his way into a more substantial role almost anywhere he's been. Orlando just kept force-feeding him into the lineup, and it just wasn't working, and Phoenix took a flyer on him, and that didn't really work out. So, why should or should not people expect things from Payton this year that he hasn't done in the past? I don't know. I don't know what the right way to ask this question is without making it seem like I'm leading the witness here. I just haven't been impressed with him to this point, but he's only 24. What do you think we can get out of Elfrid this season? Is a best-case scenario Rondo last year, or is there more he could offer as a younger basketball player?
I mean, I think he could possibly give you more rebounds than Rondo did. I know Rondo is actually a pretty great per-minute rebounder on this team. I know Elfrid for years has been a second-half guy who's put up some pretty crazy stats at the end of the season, once the Magic started tanking. But as far as that goes, I mean, I don't side being that high unless Jrue goes out, and I'm not a big fan of him. Whether you led me or not, I'm not. I think you have to recognize that he is young, like you said, and there's obviously improvement that could be there. But I just don't find him to be that great of a basketball player. And ultimately, like, he might get a decent amount of assists strictly due to that role, and especially if they want to take that pressure off Jrue. So he might be a really good assist guy, but I don't think. I mean, scoring, I don't expect to be that great. If you're in a field goal percentage league, then obviously the fact that he doesn't shoot threes helps you, but then the fact that he doesn't shoot threes also hurts you in terms of three-point production. So I wouldn't expect amazing things, but I would also be surprised if he wasn't getting 20, 24 minutes a night strictly due to the fact that I don't like our guard depth a whole lot. So I think the minutes are there for him.
Yeah, who else is back there?
So we've got Jrue, Elfrid Payton. I think Ian Clark will come in a decent bit. He's really, honestly, I don't trust Clark a whole lot if his shot isn't going. So I think So Frank Jackson is the guy that's sort of a wild card in all of this. I don't watch a lot of college basketball, so my exposure to him is limited. But he is a fantastic athlete, and I think one of the things that really serves him in this offense is that when you have bigs who can do dribble handoffs, and when you can kind of get rid of the pick and roll responsibility in the traditional sense, and creating that all for yourself, if you can create within the flow of an offense, he's a fantastic athlete with a great first step. And I think that will provide opportunities for him to contribute. He seems to be a very mature guy. Again, I can't emphasize enough, I love that guy's athletic profile. I think it's really, really good. And I think in this offense, that could be great. But he's also, 21 or whatever, coming off multiple injuries. So that's someone to keep your eye on, I think, more long-term than short-term.
Each one more arrow up, arrow down, or arrow sideways? Is he an up, down, or a sideways?
Sideways. Each one more is who he is. I can't believe I forgot to mention him when you asked. So each one is very dependable, knockdown shooter, someone who runs a lot of secondary action stuff. But one of my favorite things is a sort of side pick and roll where Davis sets a down screen for each one more. He curls around, receives the pass, and then it becomes a Davis alley-oop or an Etuan Moore floater, which he's very good at. But Etuan Moore will never be a volume guy. That's not his role. He'll knock down his threes when he plays, and I expect 30 minutes a night from him. So, but if you're looking for anything past that, I wouldn't expect a whole lot.
All right, for the gambling crowd, Pelicans, better or worse than last year? You think they win more games or fewer?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, it is. I figured I'd hit you with a tough one before I let you go.
That is a tough one. I would say they'll probably be about the same. I think they're actually set up fairly well for the regular season. I think not having Cousins, again, is not actually that bad of a thing. I still think there's a chance that they trade that first round pick at some point, whether it's the deadline or before that, to get some sort of wing or point guard help. I hope that's the case. So the floor could be pretty low if Davis gets hurt, obviously, because now we don't have Cousins to eat up that usage if he gets hurt. So yeah, best case scenario, maybe 51, 52. Worst case scenario, you could be talking, again, minus a Davis injury. Let's just pretend like that doesn't happen. Worst case scenario, 43, 44 wins. They'll be good, I think, unless Davis gets seriously hurt.
That sounds all right to me. Mike Pellisier, thank you as always. Again, I'd love to tell people to go follow you, but they'd have to go find you at a coffee shop to do so. You are the man.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate being on, man.
Bourbon Street Shots is the website. That's where you got to go. You can't follow Mike individually, but you can follow his work. bourbonstreetshots.com. It's all written out at the website. At Bourbon ST Shots is the Twitter handle. Mike, thanks again.
Thanks, Dan.
And by the way, for those that are interested in coupon codes, we have another one for you. It is BROW, BROW. BROW is the coupon code. Get yourself $3 off the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. Oh, baby. That coupon, of course, is good on whatever the price listed for the draft guide outside of any other massive sales that may pop up here and there. But again, it is BROW, BROW, the coupon code. $3 off the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. Go get that right freaking now. And that way I'll know that you were listening to this podcast as well. Mike Pellisier, always a sharp cat. We'll be talking to him a few times at least during the regular season, shining a little bit of light on what we can expect from the Pelicans this year. And by all accounts, no big surprises there, really, but he's as down on Elfrid Payton as I am, and so that made me kind of happy. Let's jump right back into the mock draft so that this thing doesn't run too terribly long. It will, by the way. Spoiler alert, it will. Round 6, Ricky Rubio, Lou Williams, Jonas Valanciunas, Brandon Ingram, Taurean Prince, Will Barton, Lauri Markkanen, Slow-Mo, Wendell Carter Jr., Joe Ingles, Julius Randle, and DeJounte Murray. Ricky Rubio at 61. I like this one. I think he'll be fine this year. He sort of found his spot with Utah halfway through last season. I'm not that worried that Donovan Mitchell is going to take all the ball handling away because Rubio is a far superior passer. So he's one of these mid-round point guards. By the way, this is why folks still feel like you need to get a point guard and a center early, because there really is a big drop-off between the early point guards and the middle point guards. Lou Williams at 62, a little bit of a logjam in Clipper Town, but someone's bound to get hurt, right? Jonas Valanciunas at 63, he's become a pillar of efficiency, and he might be adding the three-pointer. He's never going to have a breakout season. And you heard it from Mike Possetti yesterday. He's never going to have that massive 32-minute year where he just goes nuts for 80 games. But we saw what he could do last year, playing hard for slightly more limited minutes. Great percentages guy, minimal defensive stats for a center, but he's a guy that, kind of like Cantor in the previous round, he's not going to hurt you anywhere, and you're just going to have to be okay with Valanciunas having those ups and downs. He has games where he totally disappears. He has games where he gets fired up, like Andre Drummond tonight. He generally goes pretty crazy. So this is a fine spot for him. Brandon Ingram at 64. I love the Lakers. You guys know that. I'm a pragmatic Laker fan, though. There just isn't going to be enough meat on the bone in L.A., even though, by the way, by all accounts, the word we're hearing is that Ingram and Kuzma are just ready to go nuts with LeBron this year. From a fantasy perspective, I like that way less. Taurean Prince, I got him at 65. That felt like a steal as well. Seen him go earlier in almost every draft, so not sure what happened in this one. Will Barton at 66. That's a perfectly fine spot for him. Lauri Markkanen at 67. I think that's fine for him as well. Slow-mo at 68. Earlier than I expected him to go, but people are pretty excited about what he can do in Memphis. I just think there's going to be a pretty strong adjustment period here. He's going to be one of those guys that might get dropped the first couple weeks of the season by impatient owners. That's my guess as he figures out. Because look, Conley's healthy, Gasol is healthy. Those guys are going to get first dibs right out of the chute. And as Slow-mo finds himself, he's already a guy that doesn't really do anything on the offensive side. So if that goes from something to nothing, then there's going to be a slow beginning. Wendell Carter Jr. in Chicago, he's a rookie, so you know how I feel about that. I'm not taking a chance on him at this point, especially in a battle with Robin Lopez, which could very well end up timeshare, at least for the first half of the year. Joe Ingles at 70, that's a fine spot for him. Not sure why he didn't get drafted where he finished last year. Julius Randle at 71, not buying the new stats for him. He needs to fix free throws or get some defensive stats to make that next leap, so I'm less enthused than others are. And DeJounte Murray at 72, solid mid-tier point guard here on a team that he's going to have more responsibility year over year. Well, DeMar DeRozan could take a little bit of that away, but no Tony Parker, no Manu Ginobili. Things are going to fall on him, and in his continued growth, I think he's going to be in okay shape. Jaren Jackson Jr., you knew Jonas was going to get his guy. Pick number 73, that's the start of round 7. You know me and rookies, but obviously this is a kid that does have sort of unlimited upside. I'd rather take him later because I don't think he's going to play a ton at the beginning of the year, and you're going to have to be okay with sitting on him a little bit. Lonzo Ball at 74. I like Lonzo Ball's outlook, actually, as this season progresses. You heard from Mike Trudell, probably a slow start around LeBron and Rondo, but ultimately he's going to be doing a bunch of stuff. Fewer assists, but he's still going to be rebounding, getting steals, blocking shots. Interesting kind of fantasy stat set from a point guard. Chris Dunn at 75. I like that pick. I think he could do some fun things in Chicago. Niko Mirotic at 76. Okay, if he falls that far, I'm putting him back in the Besbris bunch. I've seen him go earlier, though. Man, I'm having a lot of trouble. I'll admit, this was a guy that I was crazy about last year because you get him at, 110 in most fantasy drafts, 100 to 110. And then he posted top 40 numbers when he was healthy. I don't think he's going top 40 with New Orleans this year, but I do think top 60 is more a target for Nico. And so at 76, that's probably a good grab. Brook Lopez at 77. This is probably about where he's going to end up this season. Doesn't really hurt you too much in any one spot. Not a good rebounder, but a good box-out guy. Yusuf Nurkic at 78. This is a guy who now has sort of, the pendulum to me has swung back the other direction, where everybody was way too high on him last year. Way too high. And now I think maybe folks are a little bit too low on Yusuf, because we have seen when he gets it going, he can be a top 50 kind of guy. He just can't sustain it for a year. So you take him and you just hope you catch lightning in a bottle and then you ride it. I would take him at 80, which is roughly where we're at here. Millsap at 79, like that pick there. Darren Collison fell to me at 80. This is a guy that was, by the way, top 50 last year. Why is it 80? People are afraid of Tyreek Evans, I guess? Nah. D'Angelo Russell at 81? No thanks. Nick Batum at 82? A little early for my taste, but no Dwight Howard. You guys know I'm up on Charlotte this year. Serge Ibaka at 83. That's probably about where he should go, although I'm surprised. I feel like he probably would have fallen a tiny bit further. And Dario Saric at 84. If he has center eligibility in your league, this is a wonderful spot to get him. If he doesn't, he's not a guy I'm really targeting all that much. He's sort of a fun option to have to plug in at center because he's not going to do traditional center stuff. He'll get you steals, sort of off-category steals. He'll get you some assists. He'll get you some threes. His percentages are decent. Good free throw shooter, or has become one. If he's a forward, though, to me, I'd rather take a shot. Wing guys at this point, you can take some shots. And we'll get into those on the next podcast because we've run pretty long on today's show, and it's time to wrap this sucker up. So we got through round 7, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on today's pod. I'm hoping we can finish it up, 8 through 14. We will do 8, 9, and 10 at sort of a slow speed tomorrow, and then I'm really just going to ram my way through those last 4 rounds. That'll be where I stop only when I see a player I want to talk about. Okay, we're going to do the first 10 rounds where we're going to talk about every single player, 120 names, 120 thoughts from Dan, and then the last 48 is going to be probably like 10 to 15 additional thoughts. That's the plan for tomorrow. Also, mailbag show. Tweet me questions. Well, you got to follow me, at Dan Besbris on Twitter, and then send me a question for tomorrow's mailbag show. We'll also finish up this industry mock draft. And starting on Thursday, we're going to start talking to the other industry pros from this mock draft. That's right. Kyle McCune, Josh Lloyd, Alex Rickleen, Seth Klein. Those shows, by the way, will be recorded probably by the time you hear this podcast. Matt Smith, we're recording that one tomorrow. The ITL guys, likely early next week. We'll get all these shows on the books. We'll run them out to you. It's going to be fun. Boy, I got a lot of podcasting to do, don't I? Just stopped and realized how many things I have to do. Again, the code for today's show, thanks to Mike Pellisier of Bourbon Street Shots, the code is BROW, B-R-O-W, for $3 off the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. That is hoop-ball.com. Click on the Draft Guide link, or you can choose Premium from the top navigation bar and choose Go Premium. Select the Draft Guide. You can buy it there as well. Hoop Ball forums, by the way, starting to kick into gear a little bit as we ramp towards opening day. Make sure to check those out. You can post questions. You can have discussions. You can try to fill your leagues. Anything you want to do over there, feel free, with the exception of posting things from the Premium Guide on the free forums. I am Dan Besbris. Thanks again to Mike Pellisier. A wonderful show in the rear view. Mailbag tomorrow. We'll talk to you then.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.